So I want you to picture a conference room.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, you know the exact one. It's
Yeah.
2 in the morning. You have this massive mountain of bankers' boxes, half-empty coffee cups everywhere, and just an army of junior lawyers, completely bleary-eyed, reading documents one by one.
A very familiar, painful scene.
Right. And for decades, just throwing human bodies at a mountain of data was the default. I mean, it was the unquestioned, absolutely safe way to handle legal discovery.
Safe in huge air quotes, yeah.
Exactly, because what we're going to see today is that this slow, manual human review is actually a massive ticking time bomb, both a financial and an ethical liability. We are doing a deep dive into a June 2026 white paper aimed directly at law firm leaders. It's called the eDiscovery Dilemma. Can you afford not to implement AI workflows? And it basically completely dismantles the idea that avoiding artificial intelligence is somehow the prudent, conservative choice for your firm.
It really does. It represents a profound shift in how the legal industry operates. Deciding whether to use technology-assisted review, whether we're talking about older predictive coding or modern generative AI, it used to be treated purely as an IT choice.
Like a nice to have.
Right, a nice to have. Something you could opt into if you wanted to be super cutting edge or market yourself that way. But the core premise of this research is that that framing is totally dead. Once a legal matter hits a certain volume or complexity, sticking to the old way isn't a neutral decision anymore.
Because the stakes are just too high now.
Exactly. By avoiding AI, you are actively choosing to take on escalating financial, legal, and ethical risks. You are opting into danger.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because clinging to the familiar way isn't just inefficient anymore. According to this paper, it's borderline professional negligence. It's like a modern accounting firm insisting on using abacuses because calculators feel a little too much like a black box.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. Like, sure, you understand exactly how the wooden beads on the abacus move, but at a certain point, the refusal to use a modern tool becomes a literal liability to your client.
That is exactly the dynamic at play. But to really grasp why avoiding AI has become so dangerous, we kind of have to look at why the legal industry has clung to that abacus for so long.
Because change is scary.
Change is terrifying, especially for lawyers.
Yeah.
And there is a deep psychological comfort in the old way. The traditional workflow is highly tangible. You process the data, you run some keyword searches to filter it down, and then human beings sit in a room and read the results line by line.
You can physically see the work happening.
Exactly. It feels safe because it is incredibly auditable. Judges understand keyword searches. When there's a dispute with opposing counsel, you can just hand the court a list of terms and say, look, Your Honor, we searched for these specific words, and here are the people who read those documents.
Right. I mean, you can put a human being on the stand and literally ask them what they did. It feels inherently defensible.
It does. But the math in this white paper proves that this feeling of safety is a complete illusion.
And not just a minor illusion, a total structural failure.
A total illusion. What's fascinating here is that the data proving humans are terrible at this isn't even new. We've known this for a long time. The paper actually references this landmark study by Blair and Marin from all the way back in 1985.
1985. We're talking pre-internet era for most people.
Exactly. So they had lawyers use early full-text retrieval systems on a database of about 350,000 pages. Now, these attorneys were incredibly confident in their work. When they were surveyed afterwards, they estimated they had found over 75% of the relevant documents in the database.
Wait, so these lawyers were absolutely positively confident they had unearthed 3/4 of the evidence they needed to make their case?
Oh, absolutely. Their perceived recall was incredibly high. They felt great about it.
But what was the actual number?
Their actual retrieval rate was about 20%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they missed 80% of what they were actually looking for.
So they were practically flying blind. And they had no idea.
None whatsoever. And the paper makes it clear this wasn't an anomaly. And it certainly wasn't due to bad faith or laziness on the part of the lawyers. It is simply a structural failure of human cognition when we are faced with massive, repetitive data sets.
Because our brains just aren't built for that.
Exactly. The human brain is not designed to read 10,000 slightly different variations of a corporate email and maintain perfect attention. You just start glazing over. And this exact failure has been replicated over and over in the decades since.
The paper mentions a few other big ones, right?
Yeah, in 2010, research by Reitblatt showed that commercial AI systems easily achieved recall rates that were statistically indistinguishable from humans, but with significantly higher precision.
Meaning they found the good stuff with way less junk mixed in.
Right. And then in 2011, there was the really famous Grossman and Cormack study. That one definitively proved that AI could exceed manual review on both precision and recall and do it at a mere fraction of the cost.
I'm really glad you brought up the cost, because the financial toll of human review is just staggering when you look at the numbers. Even with the early automation tools we've had for a while now, manual review still consumed 64% of all eDiscovery spend in 2024.
It's the massive elephant in every litigation budget.
Literally. And it's projected to drop to about 52% by 2029, but that is still a massive chunk of change. We're talking about traditional linear review costing anywhere from $1.50 to $3 or more per single document.
Which adds up incredibly fast.
Meanwhile, AI-assisted review operates for literally pennies. I mean, between 11 cents and 50 cents a document.
The economic disparity is undeniable. When you multiply those dollars across a data set of, say, 2 million documents, the difference between human review and AI review is the size of a small country's GDP.
Okay, but I have to stop you there and kind of play devil's advocate for a second,
Yeah.
because I hear the math, I hear the cost savings. But if I'm a partner at a big law firm, it is my law license on the line. I am terrified. If an AI hallucinates, or if the algorithm inexplicably misses the one smoking gun document that loses my client's case, it's my career that's over, not the computer's.
That's a very common fear.
I would frankly rather overpay a room full of tired humans than risk disbarment because a machine learning model had a glitch. But here's my question. If the data has been this obvious since 2011, why did the industry plateau? The paper notes that as recently as 2022, only 26% of practitioners were using predictive coding. Why did the legal profession stare at the math for a full decade and essentially say, no thanks?
Because that fear you just described is very, very real, but it's based on a completely flawed premise. What you're missing is that the human eyes are actually more likely to miss that smoking gun than the machine is.
But the partners didn't know that.
Exactly. The reason the industry ignored the math for a decade is because human failure is invisible. Think about it from a practical standpoint. When human reviewers miss 80% of the relevant documents, the partner overseeing the case doesn't know.
Because they don't know what they don't know.
Right. The client paying the bill doesn't know. The opposing counsel doesn't know. You cannot easily audit what you never found in the first place. So the process never appeared broken to the people paying for it. You felt safe because you didn't know how badly you were failing.
That is genuinely terrifying. We were comfortable simply because we were ignorant.
Precisely. Ignorance was bliss. But recently, two massive shifts occurred that blew that wide open. First, the sheer volume of data in modern litigation. I mean, think about your daily life. Slack messages, Teams, chats, text messages, countless emails. It broke the physical limits of human review. You physically cannot hire enough humans to read it all anymore.
There literally aren't enough hours in the day.
No. And second, the explosion of generative AI over the last few years finally shattered that adoption plateau. Between 2023 and 2024, AI adoption in legal practice nearly tripled in a single year.
And because that human failure rate is no longer this dirty little secret, the entire ecosystem surrounding law firms is actively starting to penalize them for it.
Oh, heavily.
The courts, the ethics boards, the clients, they all converging on this issue. Let's start with the courts. How are judges actually reacting to this old-school human review now?
Well, bluntly, they are losing their patience. The federal rules of civil procedure were amended back in 2015 to introduce the explicit requirement of proportionality into discovery. Basically, discovery must be proportional to the actual needs of the case.
Meaning you can't go crazy with the budget if the case doesn't warrant it.
Exactly. The courts have to consider the amount of money and controversy, the importance of the issues, and whether the burden or expense of the proposed discovery outweighs its likely benefit.
So a judge isn't going to let you spend $5 million paying humans to look for emails in a contract dispute that's only worth $1 million.
Right, that makes no sense. And the white paper highlights a brutal example of this in practice. The case of Lawson v. Spirit Error System.
Oh, this one is wild.
It really is. A party persisted with an incredibly costly, ineffective manual review process. The court looked at the massive bill, looked at the terrible results they got, deemed the entire effort completely disproportionate, and shifted over 754 $350,000 in costs against them,
Over $750,000 in penalties.
just for refusing to be efficient.
Wow.
Just. Wow. Yeah, the paper calls this a proportionality inversion. If AI tools can drastically reduce the cost and burden of a review, choosing to ignore them exposes you to intense judicial scrutiny. The court will simply look at you and ask why your process is so wildly expensive when a proven, cheaper alternative exists.
Which flows perfectly into the ethics boards, because
Yeah.
this part completely blew my mind. The American Bar Association actually updated their core ethics rules, specifically the rule on competence. Ignorance of technology is now literally an ethical violation.
That's right. The ABA amended the comments to Model Rule 1.1, which dictates professional competence. It now explicitly states that maintaining competence means a lawyer must understand the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology.
It's not just about knowing case law anymore.
Not at all. And this isn't just a suggestion from the ABA. As of 2025, 40 states and Washington, D.C. have adopted this duty of technological competence. And as of January 1st, 2026, Puerto Rico enacted it as well with Rule 1.1 thing. You can no longer just be a good lawyer on the substantive law. You are ethically required to understand the tools used to practice that law.
Okay, so the judges will fine you hundreds of thousands of dollars, the Bar Association will sanction your license, and if that is enough motivation, the people actually writing the checks are furious.
That's right.
Let's talk about clients. The paper cites a massive 2025 survey by the Association of Corporate Counsel and Everlaw. They interviewed 657 in-house counsel across 30 different countries. These are the people hiring the law firm.
The ones with the power.
Right. And 64% of them expect to rely less on outside counsel as AI matures. And 58% of them are actively angry because their law firms haven't adjusted their pricing to reflect AI-driven efficiencies.
I mean, you can't blame them. The clients read the news. They know generative AI exists. They know it makes reviewing documents exponentially cheaper. And they are demanding to see those massive savings reflected in their monthly bills. They are no longer willing to subsidize an army of junior lawyers reading documents at $3 a pop.
But wait, here is the stat from that exact same survey that makes absolutely no sense to me. 59% of those in-house legal teams do not even know if their outside firms are using AI on their matters.
Yeah, that's a huge disconnect.
Over half of them are entirely in the dark. If 6 out of 10 clients don't even know what tech you're using, isn't this just a massive communication and marketing failure by the law firms rather than a purely technological one?
It is absolutely a communication failure. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's one that functions as a ticking time bomb for client retention.
How so?
Think about this from a corporate management perspective.
Hmm.
If your firm is up for a panel review or you're pitching for new business in an RFP and the client asks you point blank, are you using AI on our matters to save us money? And your answer is, I don't know, or no, you are going to lose that client on the spot.
Because someone else will say yes.
Exactly. They will simply take their business down the street to a firm that is proactively transparent about using technology to protect their legal budget.
Okay, so the pressure is immense. You have the courts, the ethics boards, and the clients all screaming at law firms to adopt AI. The natural instinct here, especially for a panic law firm partner who just wants to keep their clients, would be to just buy the most expensive software tomorrow and force it into every single case immediately.
Just plug it in and go.
Right. Just turn the AI on, lay off the junior lawyers, and walk away. Problem solved.
Which is the single most dangerous thing you could possibly do.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The white paper is incredibly clear on this. Adopting AI without understanding its structural limits throws you right into what they call the danger zone. Applying it indiscriminately creates a whole new category of catastrophic risk. AI is not magic, and it certainly isn't free to set up.
Right, because a defensible AI workflow, meaning one that will actually hold up when a federal judge scrutinizes it, requires massive fixed overhead. You don't just push a button and watch it work.
Far from it. You need a senior subject matter expert to train the system, you need statistically valid seed sets of documents, and you need rigorous quality control testing.
And the paper actually gives us the hard numbers for when AI is total overkill, which is super helpful. If your matter has under 50 gigabytes of data or under 250,000 documents or less than $250,000 at stake, the sheer overhead of setting up the AI is going to cost more than just paying a human to read the boxes.
Precisely. You have to know your thresholds, and timing is equally critical. The paper brings up a couple of notable cases, Biomet and Clean, which deal with process continuity.
What happened there?
Well, in the Biomet case, a firm had already spent $1 million on traditional keyword calling midstream in the litigation. They were deep into it. The opposing side suddenly demanded they switch to AI because it was, quote unquote, better.
And what did the court say?
The court stepped in and said no. You don't have to throw away $1 million of work and completely restart your review with AI just because it's a newer technology. Changing horses midstream destroys continuity and massively inflates costs.
So you really have to know when to use it, but you also have to know what you're using it on. Let's look back at that Lawson case for a second, where the party got slammed with that $754,000 cost shift. You mentioned they had a terrible review process, but it wasn't just because the technology itself failed, right?
Right.
It was because the data set they were using it on only had a 3.3% responsive yield. Literally, only 3 out of every 100 documents were even remotely relevant to the case.
That is what we call the low prevalence trap.
The low prevalence trap.
Yeah. Generative AI and predictive coding models need a robust training set to work properly. If the prevalence of relevant documents is that abysmally low, the AI system simply cannot get enough meaningful training signals to actually learn what to look for.
It's starved for data.
Exactly. If you apply a highly sophisticated AI tool to a poorly scoped, unfiltered junk dataset, you aren't going to get a brilliant legal analysis. You are just going to get extremely fast, highly expensive junk.
It's like a bloodhound. If you don't give the dog a strong enough scent of what you're actually looking for because there are only 3 relevant documents hidden among 100 random lunch orders, it just runs in circles. It has no idea what to track.
That's a perfect analogy. And that brings us to the infrastructure mandate, which frankly should terrify any law firm trying to cut corners. The paper highlights the in-read disocyanates case.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But in that case, a special master was appointed specifically to look at a firm's AI protocol. The master found serious flaws in how they applied the technology and forced the parties to completely restart their review because they stopped training the AI too early.
Ouch.
Yeah. They lacked the validated quality control infrastructure. They bought the tool, they used the tool, but they couldn't mathematically prove the tool actually worked.
Okay, so what does this all mean? I need to pause you here and push back. Because you just spent the last 10 minutes telling me we absolutely must adopt AI, or we're ethically compromised and losing clients.
Yes.
But now you're telling me about Lawson and disocyanates, where judges are ruthlessly sanctioning people specifically for using it. Doesn't this massive asymmetric risk completely justify those partners who wanted to avoid AI in the first place? I mean, if I use humans, I might overpay. If I use AI wrong, I get humiliated by a special master and have to start over from scratch.
It absolutely sounds like a contradiction on the surface, but there is a crucial distinction you have to make here. These cases represent implementation failures, not methodology failures.
Okay, explain that.
The courts did not punish the parties in Lawson or disocyanates for choosing to use artificial intelligence. They punished them for using it incompetently. In fact, in disocyanates, the special master explicitly endorsed the use of the AI technology itself, but rejected their specific sloppy protocol for how they deployed it.
So it's not the tool's fault, it's the carpenter's fault?
Precisely. The legal system is sending a very clear message. The remedy for this asymmetric risk isn't to run away from the tool. The remedy is to learn how to use the tool correctly and build the infrastructure to mathematically validate your results.
Which brings us to the roadmap, because this is what people need. How does a firm actually build a system that courts and clients will trust, rather than one that gets them sanctioned? The white paper lays out a very practical framework for knowing when you have crossed the Rubicon and AI is essentially mandatory.
They look at 4 key thresholds to help you decide. First, case size. Does your dataset have enough volume to mathematically support a structured validation protocol? Second, who are your clients? If you are competing for major AmLaw 200 or Fortune 500 companies, they expect AI efficiency by default.
They won't accept anything less.
Right. Third, where are you practicing? Are you in one of those 40-plus states with a strict ethical mandate for tech competence? And fourth, are you in a federal venue where proportionality rules are strictly enforced?
So if you meet those criteria, you have to move forward. You have no choice. And when you do, the paper gives us the absolute gold standard for how to execute it defensibly. It's derived from a 2018 antitrust case, and I absolutely love this name, the In Broiler Chicken Antitrust Litigation. It is literally referred to in the industry as the broiler chicken benchmark.
It is the definitive operational playbook for the industry right now. If you want your AI review to be defensible in federal court, you have to meet specific technical requirements from that case.
Okay, break it down for us.
First, you must deduplicate your data by hash value. Second, you must disclose how you are threading emails. Third, you should show a preference for continuous active learning or CAL over older fixed seed TAR 1.0 systems. Fourth, you must perform statistical illusion testing. And finally, you need to target a recall rate of at least 75%.
Okay, we need to translate some of that because that is a lot of dense engineering speak for a regular lawyer to digest. Let's start with deduplicating by hash value. That essentially means giving every single document a unique digital fingerprint so you aren't paying the computer or a human to read the exact same company-wide memo 50 different times, right?
Exactly. It's mathematically stripping out the identical noise.
And email threading is similar. It basically means grouping an entire back-and-forth email chain together so the AI reads the entire conversation in context rather than analyzing each reply in a vacuum.
Spot on. It understands the flow of the conversation.
And what about continuous active learning versus the older systems? What's the difference there?
So, older AI systems used what's called a fixed seed. A senior lawyer would read a few thousand documents, feed them to the computer, and the computer's understanding of the case was completely locked in based on that initial batch.
So if you miss something in the first batch, the computer never learned it.
Right, it was rigid.
Yeah.
But continuous active learning, or CAL, does exactly what the name implies. Every single time a human reviewer makes a decision on a document anywhere in the process, the AI updates its understanding of the case in real time. It gets smarter with every single click.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But the one that really stood out to me from the broiler chicken benchmark is illusion testing. Because that's a very fancy way of saying you have to mathematically prove that the pile of documents you decided to ignore is actually irrelevant. You can't just say, well, the AI didn't flag these, so we threw them away. You have to statistically sample the trash pile and prove to the judge it's actually trash.
Exactly. You are validating the negative.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Listening to you explain the broiler chicken requirements, the hash values, the continuous learning, validating the negative, it sounds exactly like a pharmaceutical trial.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, think about it. You don't just invent a brand new experimental drug and immediately dump it into the public water supply. You run a highly controlled pilot. You measure the efficacy against a placebo, which in this case is traditional human review. You rigorously document any side effects or missed documents, and only then do you scale it up.
Yeah.
This validation protocol, it is essentially the FDA approval process for your legal strategy.
That is a brilliant analogy, and the white paper recommends exactly that approach, a tiered rollout. Do not just flip a switch and force AI onto every case in the firm overnight.
That's how you end up like the diisocyanates case.
Exactly. Start with a structured pilot program on 2 to 4 large matters. Document the metrics meticulously. Compare those metrics to your historical human review costs so you have hard proof of the financial savings. Train your practice groups on how to interpret those numbers and then systematically integrate it into your firm's standard matter intake workflow.
So this really isn't about just buying a piece of software. It's a fundamental restructuring of how the firm evaluates and processes information from the ground up.
Which brings us to really the ultimate question. And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider right now. Look at your own workflow. If your organization was subpoenaed tomorrow morning and you had to submit a sworn documented rationale for how you review documents, would it stand up in a federal court?
That's the million-dollar question.
Literally. Could you defend your choices under the severe scrutiny of the broiler chicken benchmark?
And if the answer is no, then according to this 2026 white paper, you are operating on borrowed time. So let's synthesize the journey we've taken today. For decades, traditional human review felt like a safe harbor. It was tangible. You could point to the people doing the work. But we've seen the data. It's a very comfortable illusion. Humans miss up to 80% of what they're looking for, and it costs an absolute fortune.
And now the ecosystem has caught up.
Right. Federal proportionality rules, strict ethical mandates requiring technological competence in 40-plus states, and deeply frustrated clients are all converging to make that old way a massive, undeniable liability.
But the flip side is equally perilous. Buying an AI tool without building the proper validation infrastructure, without the hash values, the continuous active learning, and the illusion testing is just trading one liability for another. The question for you is no longer whether AI works. The math and the courts have settled that debate. The question is whether you have deliberately, actively documented why you are or aren't using it in your specific context.
It's all about intentionality. You can't just drift along on the status quo anymore. But I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought that builds on everything we've talked about today. If this technology continues to mature, driving the cost of document review down to effectively zero, while pushing accuracy up to near-perfect levels. How does the fundamental nature of legal strategy change?
That's a deep question.
Right, because for decades, legal warfare has partially relied on attrition. The strategy was often to bury the other side in millions of pages of data, knowing full well they couldn't afford the human hours required to read it all. It was data camouflage. But if AI utterly destroys that camouflage, finding the needle in the haystack instantly and for pennies, will legal disputes finally be decided purely on the actual facts of the case, rather than who has the bigger budget to hide them? It's a wild thought.
It changes the whole paradigm.
The abacus wasn't just a tool, it dictated the entire pace of the game. Now that the game is moving at the speed of light, clinging to that abacus isn't safe. It's the most dangerous thing you can do. Thanks for diving deep with us.